Hi everyone. I'm going to do hopefully a quick video on how to make your own large sunflowers for relatively cheap. These things are far from perfect. I didn't intend them to be, but in a mass you don't notice the individual imperfections, which they've all got. So we'll go through this pretty quick. I'm going to move this aside, it takes up too much space. Now, what I used is a couple of cheap dollar store acrylic paints, some white glue, some yellow craft paper that's middle weight. I think it's about 40 or 50 pound, and then I also use some green that's a little bit heavier weight. And what makes it all work is this stuff. I know it is twist tie, you might know it as garbage wrap. It's actually, they call it for the garden when it's in green, and it's in huge long 100-foot rolls. Oops, sorry, I'm not showing you there. We've used up most of this one. We'll come back to that in a minute. Now the main secret are the punches. That's actually they called this one the sunflower. And some other makers, they're selling these really cheap on eBay, like $2 or $3. Some of them are just calling this a sunburst, and other ones have different versions of flower heads and stuff like that. I'll come back to it in a minute. This one's kind of a pain, and that it punches, you can only really punch one at a time. This one is the Valentine or heart that I use for the leaves. This will punch a couple at a time, and then you clear it out. This one cost me a bit more because I bought it at a local craft store, but you can get the same thing on eBay. This one actually tells you the size. Hopefully I'm pricking that up. 5/8 of an inch, or 159 millimeters, which gives you these. There we go. They're about the same size. So you start off with punching out gobs and gobs. I did a whole bunch in a different color that I didn't actually end up liking. Harrison, this is a color I did use. I'm not sure if the camera's picking it up well. And once you're done with these, it works a little bit better if you find yourself the center. Where if I put stuff? There we go. I'm not sure if you can see this. You keep checking the camera. All I did was really, come on, center this on the grid, which is where this one is just now in the crosshairs, if you want to call it that, roughly, and punch a hole. And did that for every single one of them. Now, for this stuff, do not use your good new sprue cutters. Use your old ones or some pliers. These are my old ones. They go through it no problem, but I wouldn't like to try them on plastic now. Cut them to about the length you want. This one's far too long. Doesn't matter much. Move back up. And then what you want to do, this one's a better length, is take off just a couple of millimeters at one end. By the time you're done with this, expect your knife to be dull, because it's going to be scraping against metal a lot. All you want is a little bit of a tip. So what you're going to do is push two of these on and through at the one end. And then you're going to mix some of the, for the centerpiece, black, the brown, and the white glue, and glue two of them in place, which will give you something like this. And of course you strip off the other end a little bit more, because that's what I used for a base for the diorama, is this the exact same insulation, so I can punch it in where I need it to go. Now, once this is dried, and it's a very dark blackish color, I only put a spot in there because when you touch it with the glue, it tends to lift the upper one off. So you just touch the metal with a little bit of the glue, then you put a little bit of green glue, or green paint and white glue on the back to keep the inner one from spinning as well, and also join it up a bit. And then you come back later with some more black brown paint and paint in the actual face a bit. You could probably build this up with more glue, too much effort. So you're left with something like this. Then again, this is where it's tough on the knife. You cut off the beginning of your leaves from the stalk. You cut it down like that. And add a couple. 2 or 3 seems to be about right. Then you put on some thick crazy glue, or CA glue. The regular stuff's too runny. And then you'll just glue one of these in place on each one. I did all of mine wrong. I did all of mine, hopefully you can see this, like that. It's sort of the butt cheek of the Valentine sticking out. When I actually went back, and I was halfway through, went back and looked at pictures of sunflower seeds, the point, the single point is out. I should have done them this way. But there's so many and there's such a clutter, and you know, we're model makers, not gardeners, and certainly not sunflower farmers. I don't think anybody noticed until I just told you just now. Again, imperfections are just hidden in the mass. So once that's done, you could probably better roll the neck, or whatever you want to call it, the stalk. It's right around something round. I couldn't be bothered. I just bent them all pretty much at 90 degrees with tweezers. I'll show you. That's all I did. Most of them actually look like that. Again, imperfections are hidden, and I'm lazy. Then the last thing I did before planting them was I gave them all a blast of a little bit darker green. And I actually used this NATO green from Tamiya. Showing up. XF67. And do a little bit of a close up here. That's what you're left with. You kind of have to give it a bit of paint. I don't know if that'll even show up, because in some places you've exposed the metal. I don't know if that's showing or not. I missed a spot there. And you just want to cover that metal up and give it a slightly more realistic color and hide the tone of the plastic a bit. Again, it shows through in a few spots that I've missed with airbrushing on that Tamiya paint. But you know, you recognize it for what it is. It's supposed to be a field of sunflowers. Just like this isn't actually a panther tank, it's supposed to be a panther tank. And these clearly are not real people, they're supposed to be people. So the eye is willing to play along, or the mind is willing to play along. So individually, it's not tough. It doesn't take any real skill. You just have to be prepared as you're going along. At different points, you will lose the top piece on some of them because they're not really held on all that well. And this one will probably fight me just to prove me wrong. Sorry. But they will. Oh, that one's on there like mad. They will, when you're handling them, dealing with them, occasionally just pop the top one off. Yeah. and you can either fiddle to get it back on, or you can just throw it aside and keep moving on. Your choice. So that's how you turn a couple of dollars worth of stuff into this. Again, I just cut up all my excess ones in the color I liked to create the scatter on the front, and along with on the back, the remnants of what was run over. Anyway, food for thought. If you're really bored, give it a try yourself, or if you want to save a lot of money. This is the here's some store-bought ones I bought. And you can see what I mean about the leaf. It's pointy away, kind of dirty. Price on here? Yeah, it's $12 Canadian. It's about $9 or $10 US. And that gets you 16 of them. And these ones are actually short compared to what I've got on the diorama now, but you can see the size difference. And believe it or not, these things are actually to scale. The sunflower seed can grow up to 12 or 16 feet tall, which, when we take a look at our scale ruler, where are we? Just the stock on this isn't even 7 feet. There we go. So by the time it's bent, it'll probably be closer to 6 feet. So, there you go, information. Have a good day. Bye.